Good evening, everyone. So, what we have here is a tour watch. I know that might be slightly hard to believe since it's not exactly cheap, but a bunch of us got together and said, hey, we kind of like this watch, but we want to give it a good test drive before we think about getting it. So we pulled together and ended up getting a nice gently used model. So this is a 2254. This is one of the kind of cult classic Omega watches. This is from the same era as the pre-ceramic Bond, S&P Bond, kind of famously worn by Pierce Brosnan in the 007 series, but this is the sword hand version with a black, let's see if I can get the focus here, black wave dial, aluminum insert. It definitely has a nice, authoritative, loud ratchet. Everything lines up really good as you'd hope and expect in a watch this price. Yeah, so it's got the 2293 based Omega caliber. I don't know. I don't bother memorizing the fake names that Omega gives the ETA movements from the period. But it's 41.5 millimeter. We'll confirm that right now. But my impression so far has been this is, I mean, if you haven't experienced one of these watches yet, they're famous for hang on, change my units here. Famous for being very thin. So yeah, 41.5 or so, but they're only 11.5 thin, even though they are 300 meter dive rated. So it's a super thin watch, kind of makes every other dive watch feel stupid. They're only about 47 millimeters long. They're really very comfortable. The only measurement that makes some discomfort for me is this guy. It's got a really protruding crown, so it ends up being about 45 at the crown, even though it's only 41. So it's very comfortable, but occasionally I'll get some digging from the crown in my wrist. The crown is small, but it's very smooth and very comfortable. You get a nice pop out. You probably heard that. Winding, etc. The re-engagement is super smooth. Takes a couple twists. This is the helium release. Most people are familiar with that and never use it. It's got a diver's extension. These diver's extensions are famous for being a little on the loose side, but I've fixed this one pretty decently so it doesn't pop out very easily. One thing that this bracelet has going for it, I mean, the Omega bracelets from this period are incredibly comfortable. They're like probably some of the most comfortable bracelets in the world. They have this nice thin curved clasp here. Get to focus a little bit. Nice stamping, and look at how little gap, because they have this little protrusion right here, this little guy. So when you put it on, you get almost no gap, which I know at least Robert Stewart in the group of the tour guys, he has a thing for this little gap, like you can see on my G-Shock combi bracelet, that there's a fairly healthy gap. I can literally get, easily get my fingernail in there, which I don't really care about, but it shows a level of fit and finish that a lot of watches just don't have. The loom on this thing is just absolutely nuclear. Let me just give it a quick charge in the light, and I won't be able to turn off all the lights, but I'll be able to turn off a little bit of the light. You'll be able to just see from that just how insane the loom is. And that's just from a quick second under the light. And I have all the lights in the house on right now. I just didn't have the flood lamp on, so you can see that there's not really much AR, if any AR, on the sapphire crystal. It is slightly domed. No drilled lugs, which is a real pity because these bracelets are a pain to get off. You have that beautiful Seamaster embossment with a little hologram. Oh man. I will say that this period from Omega is probably my favorite. Like this watch, especially the mid-size version of this watch, 100% hands down my favorite dive watches of all time. Incredibly comfortable bracelet, functional. Everything is curved and smooth, and there's there's a little bit of flex, but there's not a lot of rattle, especially when it's closed. The rotor's a little round, but that's part of the thinness of the. You're gonna get that with a little bit of thinness in the case. The watch is incredibly legible. You always know what time it is. The ratcheting on this. The only downside I have, and this was more so, I had a mid-size Bond version of this. And this scalloping on the bezel makes the bezel almost useless. If your hands are wet or greasy, and it's just hard to turn. I mean, if your hands are dry, it's not an issue. But if you're actually in the water, which is, it's a professional dive watch, so that should be, anything you're putting a helium release valve on, in my mind, you should at least be considering how it performs wet. You get just major slipping, and you gotta just like crank down on the top of it to get it to turn. So to me, that's probably the biggest fault of the watch. Drill lugs would be nice. The case finishing is just beautiful. I don't really care about that in a dive watch, but I know a lot of people do, especially for a watch this price. Everything is just very precisely machined. There's nice edge grinds, and I will say Omega steel scratches like nothing else. It is some of the scratchiness steel from this period that the steel from them from this period is some of the scratchiness steel I've ever seen in my life in a watch. The steel on, I've got some finish wear, but the steel on this clasp wears less than, these things just absorb scratches. You touch something and it scratches, and it's, like you get some digging on the case lines and stuff. But to me, honestly, this is also some of the most attractive steel when it's beat up, because it just acquires that totally used and abused character that really a dive watch should have, because it's a professional dive watch. It should be worn and abused, especially one with lume like this. This makes a solid field watch to me. I would love to deploy with a watch like this someday, because it's iconic looking. It's so comfortable. Most of the time, like I said, occasionally you get a little dig with this, but that's it's part of it. That's also partially because I only have a 7-inch, 6 3/4 to 7-inch wrist. So, to me, this watch is pretty much, I'll go ahead and say, this is hands down, this model, the 2254, or the mid-size variant of it, is hands down the best dive watch I've ever seen. I've had the Bond, I've handled some Rolex sport watches. I've never owned one. I've had all manner of Seiko dive watches. I've had what else have I had? I've had Orient dive watches. I've had Steinhardt dive watches, Squale dive watches. Just this series in general, the S&P Bond, I don't love as much because of the hollow hands, kind of hurt the lume. But this, any of these pre-ceramic Seamaster Professionals in that, post-Bond, pre-ceramic era, even the pre-Bond Omegas, but these ones especially, are the best dive watches that, to me, money can buy, including Rolexes. To me, this has got every bit the quality a Rolex does, and a lot better than the quality of the Rolexes of the period had. For right now, these are going between, I've got them followed on my eBay feed, and usually somewhere between $1,700 to $2,200, $2,600 for like a really mint one. And almost all of them have boxes and have been serviced, so you're getting a solid watch. And to me, if I had the money, all day. This is an incredible watch. And I swore off expensive watches for a long time, but this is probably one of the very few expensive watches I'd happily wear and abuse the heck out of. They take character great, so comfortable, just an awesome watch. So I'll give it a quick weigh for you. That's pretty chunky for how thin it is, but that's part of the quality feel, So we're talking in the 5 ounce or 142 gram range. So not quite as heavy as an SKX with a bracelet on, but pretty close. So there we go. Hope you like this quick little review of the Omega Seamaster Professional 2254. Thanks. Have a good night. Bye.